Okay, 70 million years ago, this is what our exit slip started out as. You have to remember, at 70 million years ago, we're literally just looking at sand building up on the bottom of this little riverbed or this little creek here. The layers did not exist yet, so we're literally just building up the very most bottom layer of sand. And at that time, there were happy little sea stars just floating along, you know, wee, yippee dippy dippy doo. Life couldn't be better, but then they sometimes just died, and they would get stuck down there, and the sand would build up around them, and they would start to get buried. There were also other life forms around at the time, and here's our little, I don't know, happy-faced clownfish looking thing. And he also is swimming around, and he also will die, and he settles down to the bottom, and they start to get covered up with the sand. So at that time, there was quite a lot of life in both of these guys. So they're both happily living along, and there was a collection of different types of life forms, and that sediment would continue building and would continue flowing on top of these guys, and they would get buried. And as we talked about, sediment layers over time will start to form into rock called sedimentary rock, and these little dead fellas become fossils. So this does not represent a massive dying of animals. It simply means that there was a lot of life that passed away and became fossilized. Now, over time, 60 million years ago, there may have been a slight change in the kind of sand coming down from the mountains, or some chemical change in the sand structures, and it became a slightly different color. But it's still just sediment, slowly but surely being laid down. The same kind of life forms are still alive inside of it, and they would just settle down to the bottom and pass away as they would normally throughout their lives. So what we would see in the next layer, just as we built the first one, is a different colored layer of sediment with a collection of the same kind of life forms in it. So we would see just another layer of life showing both species in there, both of them just dying as they would, and they become fossilized inside the layers. The next layer you're seeing, from 50 to 40 million years old, is just another type of layer of sediment. Slight change in chemistry gives you a slight change in coloration of the sediment, but nothing is happening here other than life is living, life is dying, life settles to the bottom, and we have another layer of fossils. Nothing has happened so far, except we know that superposition tells us that these fossils are older than these, that the same kind of species are surviving happily in this environment, and life continues on. From 40 to 30 million years, it's the same story, replaying itself. Slight change in coloration of the sand, and that's why we can see a slightly different layer. But apart from that, those same two species are happily plugging along, living, dying, and becoming fossilized. Now, you'll notice that there is absolutely no intrusion, no faulting of any kind through any of this time. It is just layers being built. This is when Earth starts to play a trick. What happens next is that there is an intrusion that starts to build, and it starts to push its way through all of these layers. So 30 million years ago, there was this horrific event where this intrusion forced its way through and flew up on top of this layer and forced its way out as a volcanic eruption that killed some things on the surface. Over time, that intrusion would cool into some kind of an igneous rock, take a slightly different coloration as an igneous intrusion that we're used to seeing. It would slowly cool down like that and form a mound. So at this time, our poor little face seems to have passed away, and it no longer exists. So the face went extinct at this time, and all that was left to swim around on the surface of the earth at this time, or the surface of this body of water at this time, were these little starfish. This is our extinction event. At this point, the face went extinct, and the starfish managed to live on through the event. So we would see little starfishes here, still surviving in this environment. But the layers continue, and the layers continue to build and build all throughout this time. However, the extinction event did occur, and the little facey starfish thingamajiggy passed away. Now, from 20 to 10 million years, we're back to just business as usual. Life is going on, our little face guy is extinct, and the starfish continues to survive and thrive. There he is, continuing on as happily as he ever did. Above the 10 million year mark, still not much going on up here, and the starfish continues on. Now the next thing that happens at this point, just above 10 million years old, is the Earth begins to rumble. And there's a giant earthquake that cuts through all the way through the rock layers from deep underneath and slices through this entire thing. And when that happens, all of these layers slide down in a giant earthquake that caused them all to slip down. And it literally can sometimes cut all the way through layers, it can cut through fossils, and it can cause the entire thing to slip down there. So what happened was the fault and the intrusion were actually separated by over 30 million years of time. So the extinction of these phases had nothing to do with the fault. So from the bottom, layers, fossilization, layers, fossilization, layers, fossilization, layers, fossilization. Giant intrusion at 30 million years ago pushes up, spills off to the surface of the Earth, and kills off all of the face animals. Then layers, 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 then an earthquake that caused the faulting. That's the entire story from top to bottom. Take a second, look at it, drink it in, and then let's try to explain it to your partners. All right, thank you.